Hello, my name is Chris Janzen. I'm an artist, musician, and assistant professor of art at Fresno Pacific University. In this video, I will give a brief overview of my creative practice, the inspiration behind my work, show some examples of the art and music projects that I've undertaken over the past 15 years or so. The title of my presentation is Do What You Like. I'm going to show you what it is that I like to do, encourage you to follow what it is that you want to do as well, even if that means sort of simultaneously being an artist and a musician. So I'll show some examples of sight and sound today. So some background information on me. I graduated in 2004 with a BA in art from Bethel College, where I studied studio art. I studied under Gail Lutch and David Long. I received my MFA from the University of South Dakota in 2007, where I studied with painter Jeff Freeman, printmakers Lloyd Menard and John Timothy Pizzuto, and art historian Ann Balakir. And in the fall of 2007, I was hired to teach at Fresno Pacific University. I happened to complete my MFA just as Fresno Pacific was looking to expand their art minor into an art major and hired me and one other person. So I timed it just right there. I teach drawing, painting, 2D and 3D foundations courses and some other art GEs, as well as private guitar and bass lessons where I'm an adjunct music department member at FPU as well. My artwork has been exhibited. It's part of collections throughout California, South Dakota, Iowa, and Kansas, and I continue to be an active musician and composer. I've shared the stage with Dan Rosenboom, Toma Fujiwara, Adam Benjamin, Marvin Smitty Smith, Ryan Kaiser, Kirk Garrison, Lyle Ellis, and others over the past 15 years or so. So more on each of these different aspects of my creative practice will unfold here. So I'll briefly jump back here to Bethel College. My student work from Bethel from 2000 to 2004 explored subject matter and form of artists that I deeply admired. The aesthetics of the Impressionists and Post-Impressionists really gripped me. The use of color, the rhythm of broken brushstrokes in Monet and Van Gogh's paintings fascinated me. Gail Lutch introduced me to the work of Lucian Freud and Francis Bacon. This was just a radical redefining of what paintings could be. And the resulting body of work was exploratory. There's not necessarily a massive consistency to undergraduate work. I don't think that there should be. I think the undergraduate experience should be, trying different things out. And so we've got examples here where I'm playing with still life. I'm exploring just exactly how I can control the paint. The painting in the center here is a representational still life of a gourd, but then I've also repeated that gourd a few times. Part of this is showcasing my control of the paint, applying like an even amount of paint to every square inch of the canvas shows also that, yeah, I know how to scoop the paint up and mix and match and get different colors and textures out of there. There's experiments that I did with stylized, figurative, illustrative kind of works that fall maybe into a pop art kind of a comic book kind of illustration style. And so that's sort of what this one falls into the category of on the right. Big Fun was a band that I had that explored Miles Davis albums like the album Big Fun. And this is a parody of the Corky McCoy illustrations that were on the covers of those albums, and also the big yellow stickers that were on the CD re-releases that Columbia put out in the late 90s. So with Gail and Dave's help, I was able to discern what potential options for grad school I had. I knew that I wasn't done with school. I was curious, and I had the privilege of, being able to do this. So I wanted to do some more art making, wanted to pick at this a little bit more. And so I chose to go to University of South Dakota, which confronted me immediately with a lot of new stones to uncover in the art world in terms of art history, art theory, my own practice, challenges from painting professor Jeff Freeman. Learned a great deal about formalism from him, about feminism from Anne Balakir, about mentorship and teaching from art department head Corey Nedler. And so, yeah, I was confronted immediately with questions of what do I want to do with my paintings? Why am I using this bold stylization sometimes? Using this sort of delicate impressionist brushstroke sometimes? What do I want to do? How does this relate to the audience that's viewing the painting? And it's through this time I started thinking more about specifically how is music like painting. Started conceptualizing my approach to painting like a musician in a recording studio. A blank canvas is like a blank tape, and I'm sitting here with the ability to add as many layers as I want, editing things in, editing things out. And so I started thinking that way, started composing my paintings using the source material that sort of came to my doorstep. So the use of pop media, the use of catalogs, magazines, television commercials, anything that's really made for a consumer audience became the sort of landscape of the early 2000s that I was living in. That landscape sort of analogous to the landscapes of the Monet and plein air paintings, or Van Gogh's paintings of his shoes. What he had in front of him was what he painted. What I have in front of me is the painting, is an advertisement of some kind of hair product that you put in your bald spot, and now you're happier. And there's the woman with cleavage that's going to immediately flock to you. And so there's undercurrents of societal critique. There's exploring the different directions that paint can move in, and this improvisational approach to creating the subject of the painting. And I've got one other example from grad school here. This is one that maybe shows further digging into the inspiration of works by painters like Sigmar Pulka, who was sort of taking surrealist techniques and pop art techniques into different directions in the 70s and 80s. The post-apocalyptic kitsch of Odd Nerdrum fascinated me. I'd never seen anything like that, maybe in the camp of Francis Bacon in sort of the beautiful terror. And abstract expressionists like Mark Rothko, Helen Frankenthaler, Robert Motherwell. These were artists that were doing things that could conceptually fall into my art as music and music as art line of reasoning that underlined a lot of my work. So this is a painting called Hula Therapy in 2006. And, it showcases a lot of different techniques. My honing in on the figure, we had a weekly figure drawing group at University of South Dakota. And so, yeah, I learned a great deal from both professors and, my peers at University of South Dakota. We explored discussed the definition of success as an artist, just exactly what is it that I want to pursue in life. The scale of a painting like this is a 6 foot by roughly 6 foot by 8 foot painting. So what am I going to do with a painting like this? Am I going to pursue a career that requires me to sell as many artworks as possible to pay my rent? I got experience doing lots of different teaching assignments as a teaching assistant at USD. So I taught 2D design, drawing 1, drawing 2. Gallery curation was part of my load for the first year of my grad school experience. And so by experiencing these things, I get a sense of I like teaching. I like sharing this enthusiasm that I have for the painting process, for drawing simple things, and for digging into real complicated emotional things, psychological things, and helping students work through that while I also am doing the same, is the direction I wanted to pursue. So that's where it made sense then for me to apply for a job, start teaching at Fresno Pacific in 2007. So I came through my graduate school experience with a better idea of what it is that I like. I I walk into a gallery and I'm looking for contrast, whether I'm looking at my own work or I'm looking at the Art Institute of Chicago's collection. I want to be surprised and challenged. I love seeing that an artist understands technique but has not lost sight of the grittiness that is in life. I think there's something fascinating about seeing something dirty and muddy to compare to something that's colorful and bold. And so beautiful really is a slippery term that really requires ugliness. I'm really interested in interactions with external material. There are some artists who are digging deep inside of their own heads and pulling abstractions from that. And there are artists too that are taking a photograph and they're duplicating that photograph to create an exact duplication of reality. And my interest lies somewhere in between, an interaction with external material, but not necessarily duplicating it perfectly, not relying entirely on the internal part of my head. And this, in some ways, began, I think, with guitar lessons I took when I was at Bethel with Craig Owens at Wichita State University. Craig, I think one of our first lessons, he asked, "How much music are you writing?" And I said, "Well, occasionally I'll write things down." But he then took a 12-sided die out, and we wrote a piece using sort of a serialist technique right then and there. Printed it out, handed it to me. There we are. We've written a piece, taking the stigma out of the canon, out of this notion that you really have to be born with this amazing gift or you're not going to get anywhere, is total myth. And so I'll take whatever I've encountered and I stick that into my art. Books I've read, artworks that blow my mind, historical photographs, personal photographs, things that show up on my Facebook feed as a reminder, things that show up on my Instagram feed. All of this is put into an artwork, and I'm making sense of my surroundings through play. This is another main thing that's happening. And anywhere that I go, I'm trying to keep my sail up because I could incorporate my meeting notes into a painting. I'm always drawing at every faculty meeting, church service, concert. I've got a sketchbook with me, and I'm playing around with the subject matter, keeping my eyes peeled for source material. So as I figured out how to balance teaching with studio practice, there are new variations of approach to art making that emerged. As junk mail volumes slowed, because there's less print media these days, my source material shifted to social media, personal photos, art history artifacts, and the garbage that I encountered in the alleyway next to my studio. This is a work called Ancient Now, 2015. It's an illustration of the technique that really increasingly is part of my practice. As I felt buried in the overwhelming stream of tasks and information that are involved in teaching at a small liberal arts college, my paintings became more like excavations through layers of media. First, there's a ritual layering and building up of the surface, and then editing out the excess until there's some kind of like an archaeological dig. I've pulled something out. This is an artwork that started off with a layering of different Aztec symbols that came from works that I was showing in class, and they sort of eventually got overshadowed by the last layer. This I'm sure it's an image that comes from a Rolling Stone magazine or something of that sort of commercial advertising material. Alternative materials like videotapes, styrofoam, wallpaper, shower curtains, they become the source material and media to interact with as well. So I've been gluing videotapes together with heavy duty epoxy, using styrofoam and bits of wood. Again, sort of comes from the curb from the walking around downtown Fresno, which, like many urban downtowns, really has seen better days. It's a place that's pretty empty. It also allows me to rent a storefront space and use it as an art studio. So it's great. And it becomes a part of the archaeological dig that factors its way into my art practice. It's a work called The Dilemma from 2013. This is a 2018 painting called Chili Pepper Dunce Cat Portal to a Spirit World, Riddle of a Sphinx from 2018. So this one involves a strip of wood and large pieces of packing styrofoam, also VHS tape boxes. And I sort of outlined some of them. Some of these are sort of using the pattern of the gluing of these bits and pieces together to put them together. And the subject matter here is about that life balance, like keeping the rocks steady, get my hands just right, then we'll keep this flowing. And that's also, it's kind of a commentary on family life. I have a wife and 2 kids, and I'm trying to keep my guitar practicing up. I'm trying to keep my studio art practice up, trying to make sure that my classes are good for students. And I'm trying to make sure there's a meaningful experience in all of those endeavors in my life. Another painting here that's a recent work, 2018, is called Tumble. This is an 8-foot long piece that involves a bunch of different illustrations of my daughter as she's sort of illustrates the seemingly endless energy of kids. I'm trying to always find ways of seeing that as inspirational as opposed to something that's a hindrance that gets in my way, which during the pandemic, sometimes that's the case. The background includes collage bits of wallpaper that come out of the house, the 1926 house that we're currently living in. As we sort of tear things off of there, of course, it gets recycled in the studio. And this brings us to 2020. The following collages, like test compositions and paintings, were created this summer. I'm still interpreting and processing them. This work, Food Safety, is a photocopy collage, and it began years ago as a demo in my 2D design class. There are spoons and a man in a hazmat suit, and they come from a 1960s Life magazine, the imagery. And so, yeah, the bits and pieces were laying around, and I decided this suddenly is more relevant than when I started this initially. So, and here's another sort of display of different directions that my mind went as I was playing with my materials. I created a series of rough collages, as I often do at the beginning of my creative process, and themes that emerge are concealed faces and abstracted, shattered likenesses. It's sort of commentary on the way that all of our lives are suddenly chopped up and pieced together in a different way than they've ever been before. The imagery of games, of chance, of gambling sort of emerged. And so that's exhibited here. We got, this is part of a movie poster where I've isolated this soccer ball that was part of a poster. This is a painting of a roulette ball on a scrap of carpet that was in my studio. This is a handle that comes from a casino slot machine. I think maybe this sphere of the ball is sort of what got my mind bouncing in that direction. And so then we've got paintings here. These are a couple works that certainly are influenced by imagery on my social media feed in reaction to the May 25th death of George Floyd. There's recurring, utilization of the face mask as that became a debated issue nationally. As I wandered around town and discovered that, mean, there's a lot of different understandings of just exactly why this mask is so important and what is problematic about the pandemic. My wife, by the way, is a physician. She's a family doctor, and so I'm confronted daily with wandering around downtown and the difference of opinions and interactions that I have there as opposed to what I hear from my wife, who's posting every week a detailed list of what the health department has discovered about the virus and how we should be keeping up with it. This is a work that investigates this concealed face. I think there's going to be a growing intelligence of reading one's face through eyes. And there's also the inevitable trends and fashions that will go alongside this new direction that we're moving in, where we have to wear a mask. It'll become a little bit more of the normal of the future. And this is a drawing on a piece of styrofoam. This is a piece that I've titled Roulette de Nature, Mort. So this is a drawing, painting, mixed media piece on a bass drum head. It is a piece that is playing with notions of the still life and the French term for still life, which is sort of dead nature, fusing that with this roulette ball, the roulette wheel, the game of chance, as referenced earlier. This is another piece, Game of Chance, which is painted on 4 VHS tapes and some styrofoam. It's actually like a cutout bit of styrofoam that I've painted our casino lever onto. And this, plays with the slot machine imagery. And lastly, we've got this piece, Head in the Sand, which is probably something sparked by the controversies at the beginning of the pandemic in California. As businesses were shut down and people were supposed to shelter in place, there were thousands of people flocking to the beach, not quite fully understanding that when you've got thousands of people at the beach, this is an awful place for coronavirus to be spreading. So there's a disorientation here. There's a fusion of figures that are angry and also comatose and fearful. And so yeah, this is a set of very heavy psychological imagery. I'm curious to hear what reactions are to it. And now I'm going to take my remaining 5 minutes here and explore a completely different half of my creative process, which involves sound. So my passion for music equals my passion for visual art. Each one feeds the other. When I'm painting, I try to think like a musician due to the fact that music is a purely abstract art form. And parenthetically here, Kandinsky has a lot more to say about this. You could read a lot from Fosli Kandinsky. On the other hand, when I'm holding a guitar in my hands, I try to think like a visual artist. So as Charlie Parker said, master your instrument, master the music, and then forget all that BS and just play. And I'm a believer in this. I think this is actually what is required in whatever field we go into. There are basics. There are things idiomatic to the guitar, to painting, to business, to teaching, that become a noose around your neck. And one of my assets as a musician is that I'm willing to take chances and do weird, crazy stuff, because that's what I was trained to do in grad school. It's what I do as a visual artist. And I've learned how to read music. I've learned a lot about jazz theory, about different ways of conceptually working. The music of Anthony Braxton and Muhal Richard Abrams, the Art Institute of Chicago, the Association for Creative Musicians in Chicago. All of these things sort of play together in my concept of making music, and it's a way of getting outside the box. It's a way of giving me the conceptual framework that makes my work compatible with chamber music, with experimental music, with doom metal, and hip hop and contemporary jazz. So one project that's an outgrowth of this is my lifelong pursuit of cramming together multiple art forms into one package. One is called Dinner. I'll let you read the title because it'll take too long to say. This is a project that a friend of mine, Jesse Nathan, is a poet who's visited Bethel recently, in recent years. He and I collaborated on a poetry, music, visual art sort of song cycle that tells an interesting story centered on Virginia Woolf and a dinner party. This is a project that actually debuted at a Bethel College Convo in October of 2008. I think it might be the longest Bethel Convo title. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the project then has existed in many forms. It was an exhibition of collages at the Alphonse Berber Gallery in Berkeley. It was a catered duo performance piece at Electric Works in San Francisco. It was ultimately a quartet music piece. We recorded a vinyl album, limited edition album, on record with this quartet here with Curtis Buettner on saxophone and Tyler Cravens on drums. And so this was performed at the Contemporary Jewish Museum in the Yud building or Yud room in 2011. Another art form mixed media piece that I've been part of is When Art Meets Jazz in 2015. This is the Brian Hamada Trio, and in this project I actually plugged a piezo microphone into the back of a mat board and ran that through a bunch of guitar pedals and had a volume pedal so I could sort of control the mix of the sound of my drawing as the music was playing. This is the drawing on the left that was the product of that. It's sort of a trio picture of Spee, Tom, and Brian, and this really is a potential direction that I'm cultivating and scheming that I do want to bring into fruition in the future. I've also participated in chamber music projects like this E.J. Inahosa composition, which involved poet Mariah Bosch as well. I'll play a tiny sample of this for you. I'm also part of a doom metal, jazz, hip hop, R&B group. It's a bunch of jazz musicians throwing everything against the wall and seeing what will stick. And this is a tune that is part of a forthcoming recording. It's going to come out in spring 2021. And this is a tune I wrote called Zanatno Moinotna. And last but not least, March 2020, I was part of a project by saxophonist Tim Shigoyan called Gentle Beacons. It's released on CD on Origin Records OR2 imprint. The album was produced by saxophonist Peter Epstein and was mixed and mastered by Sam Monet, bassist of VJ Iyer group. Unfortunately, you couldn't find a worse time to find a label to release an album and plan a tour of Southern California. The CD release party that we were going to have in town, of course, didn't happen. So please go to his website and check this one out. I'll play a little sample of this. This is a piece called Monument from that recording. if you'd like to check out more of my work, you can go to my website, chrisjanzen.info. There's a bunch of different places to find me on Instagram and Facebook. The newest 2020 work that I showed you here is like, it's super fresh. It's not on the website yet. But yeah, I look forward to talking about any of that work, any of the new work. And yeah, thank you so much, Meredith Lehman, and everyone at Bethel College for inviting me to speak. It's truly an honor to put this together. And I look forward to further discussion on our February 18th Zoom call. See you soon.